There we go.
We're on.
We are on.
Good evening, everyone. Well, back again. And yeah, it's amazing how quickly Monday comes around. That flew by. Today, I have oranges, from which we get the name of the colour, I believe. I think originally they were called oranges, but the phrase an orange got contracted into an and orange. Same with apples. That's what I've been led to believe. I may be utterly wrong.
But it's the question that you could ask, isn't it? Is which came first, the fruit or the main bit?
You can ask it. You can also answer it, I think, if you know anything about etymology. So, so if anybody knows about that, do chip in. I'd love to know. Or at least I'd love to have another opinion, which I can spout as if it's fact in some time in the future, before finding out
that pub quiz fact.
I've been horribly misled by yet another overconfident idiot, which I then become, and so the cycle continues. It's the circle of idiocy, which I play my own proud part.
Another weird fact for you, just before we get started on anything else.
Please do. Yeah.
Here is the biggest distributor of toys in the world.
Well, you wouldn't be asking this unless it had a surprise answer. So I would probably say McDonald's.
It is McDonald's.
God, good, aren't I?
There you go.
Sometimes I forget how good I am, and then every now and again. Although you kind of led me into it. It was a bit of lateral thinking. Didn't take much. Because they give them away. Yeah, I mean, it could possibly have been Kellogg's once.
Possibly. Well, I still think
or Cracker Jack.
Yeah, kids' meals would have like that. Yeah, that's what does it, isn't it? The kids' meals. But anyway, back to painting.
Don't believe I've ever had a Happy Meal in my life.
No, have I? No, I don't really do fast food, James.
But even as a child, I'm sure I would have really liked the idea, because they advertised to children, and I was just as much of an idiotic, easily led moron as any other child. But to my parents' credit, they never caved. I don't think that was necessarily out of some kind of deep principle, and more out of just, recognising the futility of pursuing happiness. They knew it wasn't going to work one way or another, so why bother? You may as well get used to it. The sooner they realise that life is just one long miserable chore, the better. And yeah, we picked up on that pretty quickly. I've mixed a reddy brown here to do a bit of drawing with. There's some interesting colours, and orange is tricky. Because, just because it is. There, that answered that.
Fantastic, yeah. Love it.
Sorry, that was
But more detailed information, please tune in next week.
There are some colours that when they're at a very high chroma, it's hard to get paint to imitate them.
Define chroma for me.
Chroma is the intensity of the colour, the saturation, if you like.
Okay.
So a fire engine is high chroma.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think of something.
High vis.
Yes, that would be. That usually has a reflective element to it as well. Well, an orange is high chroma, but a browner, the brown colour we'd think of as a lower chroma.
Okay.
So beige is basically the same colour, but it's a much lower chroma. So you identify it differently. But it occupies the same position on the colour wheel. It's in between yellow and red. So what does that make it? Makes it orange. But if it isn't very bright, we don't call it orange anymore. Same thing with yellow. Dark yellow is really kind of green or browny colour. I think my canvas has calmed down. It looked very orange earlier on the screen, so I think we fixed that. I'll switch my palette back on. It's quite keen to turn itself off today. All right, let's do a bit of drawing. Oh, I also have an exciting new time lapse. of the tea. Now, composition, this is interesting, but actually I think I'm going to make this oversized, and I'm going to make it all about that orange. And what's interesting about it? What's interesting about it is it's much wider than you think, including the shadow. The orange is, about a third of it, to be honest. So I'm going to chop. Actually, I don't mind if the shadow goes off. Let's just put a little box in to keep it all in. Orange is going to be in that half. Peel over here, shadow off the side. Now I've got this blue background as well, so that's going to help. Basic bit of drawing. And something like that. Ooh. No, okay. It's going to go up. That's almost as high at the top of the orange. So it skips up right here. Shadow comes out there. And there's this nice little blue gap that sticks out, which is going to be fun. So that's something for me to look forward to, isn't it? Yeah, soften that down. Anything here. You're right.
It was a choice of the orange based on the fact that it was going to be a bit difficult to.
Yeah, I was thinking about colours, and I quite like the idea of some bright colours. I like where that sits. It sort of sits nicely in its own square, so it's got a square here, and it sits nicely in the middle of that. The ones at the top, if I draw another square across, it's a bit lower than that, should sit in the middle of that, so they're going to be up here. Again. So yeah, it's going to be more of a colour study than anything else. Okay, that's going to be around here. So the netting's going to be interesting. I might get the rigger out for that.
Look at the what?
The rigger. Remember the brush that was developed for doing rigging?
Oh yes.
And
very, very thin, long bristle brush.
What's that? It's usually a hair brush, animal hair, sable or something like that. Drawing wise, I think that's probably enough. I'm going to mix some blue. I'm going to mix 2 blues, and I'm going to put a background in.
That's quite unusual.
Do it this early on.
Yeah.
I think it is time. Yeah, I've got quite a white light for the front. So, should we go to the... Actually, you can see the palette quite well there, can't you? I'll do this quickly anyway. So my bright light will actually be quite blue anyway. That's going to add in. Update this one. And I want it to be quite ultramarine. Now, I was always I was always interested in the nature of blue. It has a very interesting place, both in art history and in human psychology. The Greeks didn't have a word for blue. The Russians have two words for blue, light blue and dark blue. And they're distinct words for effectively distinct colours. So conceptually, culturally, they're two different colours. Because blue, it only really started properly existing you know what, I can't place it. I'm sure someone would have better knowledge than me. But it's not a colour of a thing. So at a time when pigments were made from things found in nature, blue, you couldn't really have blue. There were things which were bluish, but the idea of a bright, strong blue, they had bright yellows, they had bright reds. But a bright blue, pretty tricky.
That's actually why a lot of things within kind of cafes, restaurants, and things like that are blue. It's why you have blue roll. It's why you have blue gloves, blue plasters, and it's because
it's the non-food colour.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
stick out. It sticks out. It doesn't blend in.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and again, it doesn't stimulate an appetite. Blue food is not appetizing. Your brain doesn't want to eat it. Yeah, that's why blue Smarties were so controversial. Okay, I'm going to mix it. We're talking about chroma. This is just white and ultramarine, pretty much this color, and that's going to be too much. So I'm going to mix a similar tone with some raw umber here. And that'll sort of take it down a little bit. That's a bit more like it. Put it next to the other color again. You can see it hasn't got. It's slightly less intense. I'll keep it purpley though. So
the painting that we've got that you're going to be doing today, there's obviously the contrast of the blue and the orange.
The blue and the orange. Yeah. So the thing with blue is it has always been fascinating to artists simply because of its sort of the rarity of it. Very most famously, lapis lazuli, which is a sort of a carbon-based crystal that forms in certain rocks and was found in Afghanistan, and it was brought over and ground up into pigment at enormous expense. So it kind of became a status symbol. Tyrian purple, which was made from like a tiny sea snail, I think, was absurdly expensive. The Romans were covet that. I think I might use some unbleached titanium. Some more of this. So blue was always an object of fascination. And since then, quite famously, Yves Klein became rather obsessed with blue and even invented a blue, which he called Klein blue. And he liked to use those contrasts. I think there's a famous thing with like a sculpture painted bright orange on a Klein blue background, and it's got this striking power to it simply because of the colours. Everything else is just a kind of a visual prop to make it look less like the sort of thing that's meant to be there. But really, it's just these two colours working against each other. So I'm going to start off a bit duller, and I will work up the blueness as it goes along. And I'm going to want a slightly darker blue as well, which I will make a little bit more red. I'm going to put that over here. I'm going to borrow a little bit more raw umber. I'll use a bit of alizarin over here. Okay, now I've got a shadow colour. I think it's too dark. It's a bit of normal white. There. Yeah, that could work. I've got a greener blue in the background, which I guess I'll work my way up to. The first thing, use a big brush. Yes, that one.
Is this going to be more of a mix on the boards
Palette.
rather than on the palette on the board?
That's an idea.
Yeah.
Just throw stuff at me when I'm like, I can't.
No, it's a board. It's in front of you. Yeah,
It's called a mixing board now. We're calling it a mixing board.
mixing board. There you go.
Because I don't know why I'm apologising for being mean to Graham. It's sort of,
Deserve it. I know.
you do generally, yeah. But still, I suppose I feel bad for you today. I don't know why.
But is it? So are we doing a mix on the palette mixing board, or is it going to be more of a figure it out when you sort of get it on the canvas and?
It's always a figure it out once it's on there. But I'm going to get a basic colour on, and then I will work other colours into it as I go along, which I frequently do. Anyway. Crikey, it's not. No, I do want to put it on flat, and I'll put on thicker paint later on. Should I leave the square? I'm going to leave the square. I'm going to let it show through, like you and Uglo would have done. I'm just going to make meaningful marks here. There's one. There's one. It's more like an acorn at the moment, but just give this an aura that goes around it. And there's a bit in here. There's a sort of a flat top to that orange there. Okay, run out of that paint already. We're mixing a lot more of this. That's going to be flatter. I think I'm shrinking the size of that peel slightly. Yeah, things are moving around a little bit, but that's okay. Or maybe, no, that needs to come in. That's why it goes more like it's there. There's that bit of blue that goes in there. This is going to swoop around like this. So again, it needs to be thicker. And into there. Yes. Okay. It's slightly darker, gloomier one behind. And this blue is really going to help me when it comes to describing orangeness, because it gives me something to work from. So it's going to get lighter in the foreground. let's have some of that shadow colour now. And yeah. Where else is it? Up here. That's interesting because there's a shadow from that net. I'll come back to those blues. I'm not going to clean that brush. I will use a different large brush to start putting the oranges in. Now, the blues have wandered in from over here. Gather that up. Clean bit of palette. There's a thing I often say in classes, which in my mind there's a parallel universe somewhere where paint comes out of the tube grey, and the more you mix it, the brighter it gets. And that is a universe where painting is much easier. Because you kind of want to work from dull colours towards bright colours. But of course the paint goes the other way around. It comes out of the tube bright and gets duller the more you mix it. So there's this weird sort of backwards thing that has to happen on the palette where you kind of, make it brighter as you go along. So you sort of need those bright colours there, and that's what I'm going to try now with the cleanest possible colours I have. The tiniest dab of white for just a little bit light in opacity, because the red will darken this. I'm going to mix an orange.
That's quite a fiery orange, isn't it?
It is. In terms of colour matching, though, that's spot on. No, I'm not going to mix anything. I'd be able to mix anything more orange than that. That's my maximum orange. We've reached maximum orange.
Yes, it just made me chuckle.
The apogee of orangeness. And even then it's done. Oh, wow.
Oh, hi, Josie.
Ah, Josie's along. Super. Right. I'll do a slightly yellower one here. Next to it.
Well, we had a star watcher. It'd probably be Josie, wouldn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Every week and says hello.
Yes, very grateful for the support and interest. Right, there's a couple of oranges, but.
So you wouldn't use cad orange, James?
Well, I would, and I have some somewhere. I do have some chrome orange, and chrome orange is the orangest orange, and our orange is every other orange.
Forgive me, what's cad orange?
Cadmium,
All right.
which is a poisonous heavy metal, but nowhere near as poisonous as chrome. Which is why I think I have the last tube of it in existence, and there's only a bit left, and I get it out. So I might get it out for one little. There's one bit that needs to be more orange than anything else. I will visit the drawer, and maybe bring that out. Now, I don't want to start with the brightest possible bright one. I'm going to mix a similar tone. Well, actually, I need a shadow tone, so it's going to be darker. And some raw umber and a bit of cad red. Even that's too warm. A bit of umber. A bit of unbleached titanium in that. Okay, so this is sort of a greyer version. Nowhere near as dark as the shadow there. So this needs to get lighter. Now, let's sit up. Over that. Hard to tell, isn't it? A little bit lighter, but not much. Oh yeah, that should do it. Yeah, there you are. So there's a suitable jump there, which is a similar one to the one I want to see here. Let's do the same thing with the red. Lighten that up a little bit. It's tonally similar. Okay, let's get some of this orange, mix it with some of this umber, and this is going to actually look kind of greeny next to it. What else? Let's have a bit of that with a bit of the red. Darken that up nicely. And lastly, and this is interesting, I have a little bit of this blue, and that'll be reflecting into this orange a little bit as well. Let's put the two of those together and see what happens. Oh, weird kind of green, but it works.
Well, that's quite funky, isn't it?
So if I do the shadows and then work towards, now with what's left on the knife here, I can mix myself a slightly lower chroma orange, same recipe as before. But what's on the knife is going to sort of dull it down a little bit. You see it's not as super bright as it was. Make it a bit lighter, so a bit of white will do a job on it. It's probably too much red, a lot more yellow. More yellow. There we go. Do the same thing here. Take a bit of that bright yellow, tiny stab of white, just to lighten this a bit, and I guess we'll use a bit of this one. So it's going to be very subtle changes from the duller colours to the very bright ones, but our eye is quite sensitive to those. So hopefully that will work. Okay, other things. Got a bit of leftover yellow there. Use a bit of this light colour.
Do you find it more difficult to paint when there is fewer items to look at when you are, fewer subject items? But actually on the surface seem relatively simple and straightforward.
I think you just end up focusing a bit more. It's interesting.
So rather than worrying about the details of something.
when there's a lot of different things to get done, you're looking at how they relate together, but the different parts of something will relate together as well. Now this is interesting because there's this sort of, this is darker than the blue, which that isn't. This is slightly greener as well. Let's pop this over here, see what this does. It's slightly green. Is that darker than the blue? Not sure it is. No, same recipe, needs to go even darker than that. Still nowhere near the shadow colour. A bit yellower. Yeah, okay. Yeah. This is a fine balance. It's got to go somewhere in between. Somewhere in between. There you are. I think that's it. Oh, that's the same tone. Maybe they are the same tone. So interesting. I just made more of this, haven't I? Warm that up a bit. Okay. I'm going straight in with the darker shadow bits now. Some of that sort of colour in here.
So what sort of things are important in the subject to make sure that you bring out really well?
Good question. There is sort of there's a quality to this rind which is going to be it's got to feel right, which that doesn't. Where else is this colour? That's lighter. Crikey. You know what? I'm going to just put some of that in there as a placeholder in the meantime. That's really about all there is of that. Okay. Get on to the next darker colour. Got some shadow going on here, which doesn't look like much at the moment. My goodness, what have I done here? Ah, well, luckily I still have my blue, so I can sort that out straight away. So I'm putting some of these sort of greyer oranges in. It's got to have this relation to the other colours around it. So you'll notice that looks lighter on the canvas than the blue shadow next to it. But it's going to be nowhere near as light or bright or intense as the this is being sensitive today. top of it and there. Right. When I go to the redder shadow colour, there's a few places that turns up, like in here. Also in here. That's the real danger of this one ending up looking like an egg, so I'm going to be quite careful of that. They weirdly are quite egg-shaped. Okay.
Pick them up in the orange shape, like egg shape pile. Section for that.
Now, I mixed some of the orange with the blue, and that gave me an interesting little highlight there, which now doesn't look any different, but it is the right colour, I think. It's also in here. A bit under there. There, you can get rounder now. And a bit there. Which means this one can get darker and greener. Just going to keep using this raw umber. And in here. Now there's this particular quality to the peel.
What, sorry?
The skin of the orange. That dimpled effect.
Mm-hmm.
So I might try and imitate that later on. Somewhere in between this shadow and that orange. It's this reflected colour over here. Which is now not red enough. So I have got a red accent light going on the other side. No, actually that's okay. No, that's too bright. We'll work on here. That doesn't need it yet. What am I missing? Yeah, I'm going to be able to chuck a whole load of extra colour in some of these places. Another brush. Go down a size this time. Now, what's my mix? Oh yeah, I had this. I wonder if it'll work. It felt like the right colour at the time. It's not yellow enough. But I've got room for some highlights later on. I quite like that it's sort of quite thick and gloopy. It's not going to be very forgiving. That's the bit pulled out the top of the orange, so that's sort of important. Yeah, be able to do some highlights afterwards.
So according to what you were saying earlier, we've got a portrait next week.
Yes, Tom Stainer has put it in his diary. I bumped into him the other day. Sat for me before. Interesting chap. I was on a bit of a journey, Tom. Now, have I gone too soon with this, or is this going to work? Let this mix on the surface as it goes. I feel like this paint isn't thick enough. That's because it isn't. But there's this particular thing happening because I'm mixing on the surface. So this is my shadow colour. This is my light colour. Let's actually put some proper bits of paint on. There we are. Might not be green enough. I'll squeeze an extra bit of green in there. I reckon I can. That's a bit cheeky. I'm doing it anyway. Subtle, but it looks like it's there, so I'm putting it there. Yeah, there's some subtle hints of it here as well with these sort of. This will sit underneath the light nicely. These bits of rind in the edge. Half peeled orange. I wonder what that's representative of. Feels like it's symbolic of something. But, well, who knows what. While I'm going, okay. I'm just going to chuck on some other bits of colour. I'll get the excess off that brush and load it up with this, and this should do nicely. Okay. Yeah, those shadows weren't deep enough, but it's a tricky balance. Put a load of that in here as well. Too much for that. But it's just told me something interesting. It told me it's yellower over here. In fact, this might be the only place that... Oh, no. I think it does go under that. I'm going to go over to this yellow or orange now. And again, this is, none of these are the very highest chroma. I've still got a little way I can go with it. Go there. Ooh. Okay, I'm going to get some bits that are redder in here. Let's go down a brush again. Should I keep using this one? No, I want that one again. Okay, I'll take some of that orange, chuck a load of red in it. That's going to give me a bit there. A bit there. It's interesting scaling it up, but which kind of is. You finished? It kind of pushes it out of the canvas at you. Which I quite enjoy. Now there's also some of that red in here. So yeah, so there's a part of me that keeps wanting to scale it down. A few bits of this on. This is going to mix with the blue on the edges, so it'll create a bit of a dark line, but that's okay. What else is redder? That is. I think it's very red around there. And over here, so there's almost a sort of a luminous pinky red showing up over there, which I will get to, which will link to the netting.
I should say the netting's more of a red colour, isn't it?
It is, so I'm going to use a slightly different red.
What's odd is sort of on the orange it looks red, and then on the blue it looks purple.
Let's see if this works. Yeah, that's good. Back to the ready bits at the top here. Now the real magic's going to happen when I put the light bits of the rind on. He says, I mean, might all go horribly wrong.
You hope.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Shadow needs to darken up. I might be overdoing the darkening of the shadow. Maybe I can get a bit of that texture in now. There's sort of rhythm to how the pattern of the skin breaks up. Yeah, I think there needs to be more orange under here. think I know what I did now. Yeah. Do this. A bit of that. That's okay. I'll make a purple or blue for in here. Still not quite enough, actually. And in here. Right, I'm going to fix a few things. I'm going to go back to that lighter blue. Fill that in a bit in the middle. Yeah, like this. It's going to get gradually darker as it moves to the back. Like that. Just give it a bit of room when we come to the front. Put a bit of that light in it. I'm doing this with the brush mix, which is dangerous because it might be streaky, but no, still not enough. Very black blue down here. That's going to create a few edges for me. I've got stray hair coming out of this brush. Unacceptable. I'll get some more light in that later on. Since I'm feeling brave enough, put that splash of light in there. It's nice. A little bit up behind. Well, that's already got an oranginess to it, hasn't it? How are we doing for time, Graham?
We are currently 1953.
There you go.
You're just excited to put the time lapse on.
Yes, I am a bit. Oh yeah. Did that work? I'm sure it did. Devising a sort of extra dark down here using red. I'm going to put some under there as well. Onto it. Really tricky here. Now, a surprise special guest, Prussian blue. Just to create those hard edges around there. Doesn't really go here, but we'll do a job. Yeah. And other amusing noises. What was it? Ah! Right, that's that covered in paint then. Hey! Okay. Got this highlight colour. And it gets really light. Use a tiny little bit of oil. Oil that's been standing for a while, so this isn't the bright highlights yet, but it's working towards it. There'll be an edge on that. Get rid of that bit of dark there. Start building an edge. Go on here. Well, ultimately support the bright highlights when they go on. And it's interesting, there's bits of this that are bright and bits of it that are sort of mixed in, so I've got to be careful where I mix in. So here, if I go across and mix in as I go, I get suitably dull. So I get to here, here. Go back, reload the brush, go back to the bright bits. It's going to be here. There you are. That's a bit of mixing on the surface. That. Can even do a bit of work around the inside of the peel. And a little work around this highlight over here. Which I know it seems a bit early to be doing highlights, but actually it's not a bright specular highlight. This can get brighter as it goes along. Needs a bit of that rhythm. Weirdly, this bottom one doesn't really have a highlight. Doesn't have some of this yellow, which is a brighter version. It's going to be around there and here.
Pith is quite a bugger to put on the canvas, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tricky. Okay, chuck a few more of these blues on, especially one there, which will give me that nice little ledge. I don't mind that being a bit darker or more blue than the others. So I will have somewhere to go with the what would you call it? It's a darker, duller blue to go behind. Then I'll have a context when I get back.
Answers on a postcard for the potential name of what could we call in this one. We're halfway through it, sort of.
Well,
How do we call it?
Norwich.
Yeah.
I don't know. Orange on blue. This definitely needs to be darker in the background. I can't just do more blue there. I've got to make up another colour. This is a good time to decide what's it going to be. Violet would be almost too much against the orange. It would be a bit more sympathetic. Could be a kind of a crimson. How would that go with the netting? Maybe a paler crimson colour. I'll have to play with this for a second.
This is just getting the top third of the background right.
Yeah. Sort of a lilac, maybe. Paler. And a bit greyer. A bit of that. I can always change my mind if it doesn't work, but let's chuck this on and see what it does. I think this might be quite fun. Now, talking about chroma, this is really where it comes into play. There's a lower chroma colour like that. What colour would you call that? Sort of Palmer violet colour. There. This will forgive the crimson netting when it arrives.
Not really a good place once you are happy with that sort of top tonal background.
Yeah.
To do the break, and it's about 8:05.
Let's do a break. I'm going to bring some of that in over here as well. Just because I've got red coming in from this side. It's actually weirdly effective. Yes, well, yes, so enjoy the new time lapse. and then the old one again because I only did one. And yeah,
What's it called, James?
it's called A Very British Bunker, and is now proudly hanging in the well, a print of it is proudly hanging in the mixing room, the blending room at Twinings.
It is it? It's
Yeah.
actually there.
Yeah. Well, I presume they've put it up. I mean, they might have got it and gone, oh God, not this, but they haven't told me, so I'm presuming. Super.
And which time lapse am I clicking on over here?
Time
Time lapse in brackets 1.
Try the top one. I think that'll be it.
We shall see you in a wee while, everybody. Back
Hello.
again.
Welcome back.
Should be there, yeah.
Yeah.
Mixing desk sounds on, or looks on. Sounds on, is on, whatever. It's on.
Okay. I've got these browns here. I'm going to build a few structures in this peel. I'm going to start laying this on a little bit thicker. Just some actual slabs of paint. And while I'm doing that, looking for other little bits and pieces that jump out. Sort of little cracks in the peel like this.
Oh, Joseph likes the two time lapse.
Ah,
That's the very British bunker. I was there, but I've got my eye on that one.
yeah.
So I think it's a really great story that it's well, don't know exactly yet, but it's going to be hanging in the tea room, the blending room of Twinings, which I think is just really cool.
Yeah, that's very flattering. Okay.
What's next on your agenda for this one then?
Right. It's all too grey at the moment, which is sort of how I started it. It looks very yellow on the screen. There's a lot more red going to be going into it. And a bit more shadow. So while I've got this here, I'm going to do this with the brush mix. Put some more blue into that. There's also going to be a bit more red. Yes, I just say there's going to be more red. Well, I'll say it again. There's going to be more red. There's going to be a lot more red around here.
Tell you what,
If I have anything to do
with
with
a bit
it.
of red, James.
Could do with a bit of red, couldn't it? And what I haven't got yet is the bright highlights.
Red ones.
No, the bright colours and the lights. So hang on, I've got a few of these sort of this speckling. Now these aren't the marks I want, but I might be able to sort of trick with a bit of spatula magic.
Oh, spatula is what we all tuned in for.
Yeah, it's a bit better. Make that redder. So I'm going to put a bit of a pattern on there. It does form some shapes and things. A bit under here as well. There are some little rhythms. Now that's some more red, but it's not exactly. A bit of a crease there.
Next time we do some palette mixing, you might want to switch on the Nikon.
Oh yeah. keep it on generally. That red's on there for a few bits here. A few extra darks in. No, not that. Yeah. Let's spatula that as well, see what it does. Softens it in a bit. It gives it a bit of that slight irregularity of an orange peel. I can do this in reverse as well. Just bring some of this orange back in. Works. Put it in there. Yeah. A little bit in there. Spatula it again. Now it's got a nice crinkliness to it now.
Which the spatula was just for the effect of kind of blending the marks that you put on the canvas.
Yeah, it just breaks them up a little bit. Now, got a bit of light that goes in here. That would do for that. While I've got this orange on, I can pop a bit on there. A few bits around these edges here just so they show up. Especially here. As that goes around, it's also going to have a bright highlight that sits over the top. Before I do any of this, put even more red in here, which sort of darkens it suitably as well. That's mostly thanks to the accent light. A little bit there. Even more in here. Yeah, because it also does need to be darker. No, not that. I'll leave that there for the moment. Right, okay, now, that was it. So when I first mixed that orange, I didn't actually keep any of the extra bright orange. I'm going to clear a space now. Yeah. Don't know where I'll put that. Somewhere over with the darks. Proper clear mixing space where nothing else is going to get in it. A proper clean knife. Red, a whole rubber yellow. Let's make some more of the most orange there could ever be. And when this isn't enough, like I said, I'll visit the special drawer of chrome orangeness. I'm even going to get a clean brush for this. It's a funny thing, I often sort of delay getting to these sorts of bits. And actually, doesn't matter if it goes on a bit sooner. Yeah, especially around there. To the top there. A bit more over here. Nice flash a bit. Along here and along here. Let's turn it up there. That'll probably do for that. And then there's the yellower one, which I do still have some of. That's going to go here. A bit in there. It's a bit of variety, but not a huge colour range. Quite a bit more colour going in there. And under here. And there. Well, there's some intensity there, anyway. Still not sure if it's doing the job for me. I think it needs a bit more white. But over here, bit of lemon yellow and white. Maybe I can go for more accents here. Maybe the colours aren't far enough apart. Yeah, I can definitely do a bit more of that. I can have a bit more of that on the top.
At what point is sort of, can you put too much paint on a painting?
Oh, I think I'm about that point now. If there's I mean, I like it mixing on the surface to a certain extent, but there is a point where, yeah, if you try and get any more on it, it's not quite going to play. That's probably a bit much. See that sort of working up.
Is it for that having too much on a palette on the painting? Is it just something that you're feeling as you're putting more paint on the area? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it mixes a certain amount naturally by itself. So there's various things you can do. So I really want to lay some bright lights on now. And so I'm adding a little bit of oil to it. when it comes to things like bright highlights. So there's the shine along here, and that just sits up on the top.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it comes to bits like the highlights on here, it needs to be a bit, soften that down a little bit. Then I'll start with the brightest bits. Bright bit there. And I'll reload the brush when I need it to stay bright, and then after that it will start to mix in on the surface, which you should witness now. Those bits are bright. Right, now anything else I do is not going to be as bright. That's, I'm going to reload the brush just so I can chuck a few extra highlights on here.
How long will it take for a painting of this size and the amount of paint you put on to dry?
Oh, a little while. It depends on the colours and stuff, but maybe a week or two for it to be touch dry. For it to be cured, they reckon about 6 months usually.
Wow.
Yeah, before you should varnish it or anything like that. Okay, so now I'm getting some of these little highlights on here. That feels rindy now, which I quite like. So I'm going to do a little
Rindy a word. It's now.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I do find myself, I could say ish instead, because it's hinting at the thing you're trying to communicate. But that's sort of how you're thinking. It's
This is the benefits of English language, isn't it? Well, it's so difficult to actually bloody learn.
Well, actually, it's the limitations of it. The way I'm thinking is not a way that it's not something that can turn into words. Doesn't exist as words. It exists as sensations and reactions and.
Well, I guess so. How do you, with something that you're painting, how do you make it feel more something? Because it's a 2D.
So I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but there's various examples of brilliant literary figures completely failing to come up with words when they're presented with certain situations, and also people coming up with words and language that other people just thought was gibberish or sounded, people talk about William Blake being a mystic. There's nothing particularly mystical about what he was communicating most of the time. It was just outside of the realm of what words can do, and so and that's the world that artists inhabit. You're reaching for this thing. I think that's got some oranginess to it now. I think I could overwork that if I weren't careful, which I'm not. So watch me overwork it. Oh, few flashes. Put an actual bit of bright white on. That's cheeky. Shouldn't do that.
So based on that kind of conversation of rindy and where we went from it, there's something that I read who had posted it online. And there was a Latin professor at Dartmouth who'd wave away any grammarian stuff, basically by saying pedantry, bullshit, this is English, the shower drain of languages, entrepreneur and schadenfreude are words. Set has 35 definitions. Intelligibility is the only rule. Do as you please. And I really liked that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the point. If you can
Look, the only important thing is that the person that you're speaking to
Yeah.
understands what it is that you're trying to say.
Yeah, and if they're exactly the same kind of idiot that you are, then you're fine. And that's usually the case. No, we find similar idiots to ourselves, and,
Yeah.
and communicate.
Oh, that wasn't just a dig of saying that you're an idiot.
Well, I mean, it was that, but you know,
It was there somewhere.
and it wasn't the entire.
That goes without saying, and therefore proves what we're actually talking about. And I think I actually enjoy going.
Still not happy with the way that rine's playing out. You know, the peel or whatever you call it.
Which bit? The
This bit here.
oh, okay.
I'm trying to make it feel like orange peel. Which I think it does. Oh no, I don't. Yes, I do. No, I don't. Ah, this is the battle, isn't it? Okay, you know what I'm going to do?
Work on something else for a minute.
Yes, I'm going to go straight ahead with the netting at the back. Now I've got this alizarin. It's quite a transparent colour. I'm going to mix it with some more umber. Give it a bit of opacity. I'm going to put some safflower oil in to make it flat. Actually, I might use linseed. Yeah, I think I will. Do I have some of some? Goodness. Pop a bit in this lid, only a tiny splash. Really? Okay. It's a slightly more fluid oil than linseed. Less yellowing, but that's not concerning to me right now. I'm not going to start with a rigger. I'm just going to start with like a point brush. And just see how this plays. Yeah, so there's nice little journeys of the netting. There's also here on top of this orange. This is quite nice because it actually, the worst thing about this brush is that it sort of breaks up, doesn't hold its shape, but actually it's perfect for this string. That turns into a nonsense pretty quickly. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to need the rigger here. Now, what's that do? And get a bit closer together over here. Not there. Okay, now we've got some netting. I'll put a bit more paint in it now. A little bit less oil. It's still got these darks on it, and especially in the shadow. I'll bring up some other colours and things later on. Ah. So that's where a rigger would be more useful, because you wouldn't end up with that thick line. You'd have to work for that. Okay, now I can get that same colour and put a little bit of light in it. That's way too much. Actually, a little bit of cad red. Where's this go? Yeah, and if I get onto that proper light with a bit more alizarin, that'll probably do it. There'll be a few highlights to come on afterwards. Even lighter than that. What can I get away with? Get away with this. It's quite a fun little game, this. Okay, now while that's on the brush, where else can I get it? I can get a bit in there, get a bit of dark in here, that's cheeky. And get a bit underneath the edge of this. Bring out some extra shadows.
When you do bring in sort of new colours to use on different parts of the painting that you're doing, do you try and put those colours into bits that you wouldn't necessarily see so that it ties it all together?
Sometimes a colour's doing a job just by how dark it is. So, for example, with this, it's very dark red, but I can put a whole solid block in there. It's giving me a hard edge, and you're registering more how dark it is than what colour it is, which is a little bit naughty. But I like a little bit naughty. It's the same here. We've got these sort of shadows right at the back. Yeah, it doesn't have to have any more detail to it than that. Last thing I'll do is get some actual shiny highlights and just pop a few bits on like that. So that reads as a shiny bag now. That'll do for that. That's not holding its shape anymore, by the way. So last few things, let's really chuck a bit more of this light on here. That's almost pure white now, but I can't stop it mixing on the surface, so it's hey, bit yellower there. Yeah, it looks a bit lost, doesn't it? Everything I do looks a bit lost at the moment. I think that's probably pretty much it. Last thing will be going back to these blues. Clean brushes, which I will dry properly. This had some kind of green on it. I'll pop a bit of that in there. Back to that purpley blue. Back here. Even more red in that. Okay. I was talking about getting maximum blueness in places. That is pure ultramarine right now on the palette. Well, I mean, pure ultramarine, it's ultramarine and white, but it's pure pigment and it's a transparent colour, so it needs white to be made visible. Now, if I get a lump of that, find out where I can put it. I'm going to put it next to this orange there. Let's see how orange it makes it. It needs more white in it. Make those a bit more orange as well. So kind of a contrast colour-wise. Some more white in it and see what that does. Oof. It's a bit riotous, isn't it?
That makes it pop.
Yeah. Put a little splash in there. Now when it comes to the foreground, obviously I want a bit more light in it.
So it's quite impressive looking at your palette on on palette cam. It's considering what you look in front of you. You have blue, white, and orange effectively, and your palette is a massive array of loads of different shades, and it's just super interesting.
Well, colour is all relationships. That's the thing to remember about colour. I'll move this to one side so I've got a bit more mixing space for my blue. I'm going to put more white in that. Yeah, go a little bit more creamy in the process. Let's take a bit of that creaminess. Yeah, so the trick is getting the colours to react together. I put those rather more dull blues on at the beginning. Now the blue is having a bit more of a party, which it's going to be doing there. Put that curve in. Nicely. There we are. Now that affords me a certain pleasure. Use a little bit of oil, same brush, get into this violet, start putting that in. This is going to tie them together a little bit more as well, because that violet can borrow a bit of the blue. it's not thick like in the foreground. Now that's in, I can pop a little bit of that in there. I can put quite a bit of it under there. And put a little splash into the reflection on that peel there. And last thing. There's usually lots of last things, aren't there?
Yeah, that could be another sort of segment for the YouTube channel, isn't it? One last thing.
Well, I think Columbo beat me to it, but
yeah.
There you go. There's a nice sort of pinky shine coming off the back of that. Which again, I don't have up here, but I'm going to put it on anyway. That's actually reflecting off the peel. The inside of the peel there. So interesting, isn't it? There we are. Oranges. Wasn't there a book or a film or something called Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit?
Not sure. Well, obviously there's Clockwork Orange.
Yeah. I think I'm stopping there.
Got to be signed in orange.
No, it's got to be signed in purple. This red over here.
Oh, what the
The knitting. Try that again. Right then. Do you have a little close up?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, I forgot about my tea. Still warm. Hooray.
How's that? Jessica's very juicy painting.
It's very interesting that this looks so much lighter than this in the image. And yet when it's paint, it doesn't seem to have that jumping out thing. But if you add more light to it, you lose that intensity of colour. You put white into your orange, you're on your way to beige, as I discussed earlier.
Nobody wants to be on their way to beige.
The official colour of my car on the logbook is beige.
Right.
Yeah. Last time I got a ticket, the traffic warden called it gold. I thought I was quite flattering. At least they've sort of... They've imagined I'm a more interesting and tasteful person than I am. Whee! Okay. Let's have a little wander in. I've got the little speckles and bits and pieces. It does look a bit like an acorn. My peel.
This part of the peel that you're showing at the moment, I really like that.
Yeah, I mean, these greeny colours in here, I don't know if you can see
Mm-hmm.
How green they get, how deep the reds are in some of these bits of the orange. There's that greyish bit, there's the reflection of the blue underneath. And if we go up to these ones in the net at the back, the net's just suggested, I'm not doing all the details. With the lovely red at the back, again, a bit of reflection with little bits of light catching off the edges of the net, and that sort of crumpliness, the way it folds up. And yeah, it's that lilac background, which is actually quite grey. So the colours are never perfect with this, but they are. I think I should probably chop it down to about that. As it is, there's a bit more to it, but yeah. Chop it down to this, shouldn't I?
Well, I like the fact that it's sort of slightly further set back.
But it's
so you've got
appallingly composed. Yeah. Yeah. Still slightly oversized, well, maybe about the right size. That's a good point, actually. Let's put a real orange next to it. There you are. It's slightly oversized. I've got blue on the orange now.
Josie says, no, don't chop.
No choppings. Well, thank you so much, Ray, for coming and joining us here. Portrait next week, as mentioned. So there'll be a bit of a rearrangement. And
I think as well that Josie is stuck by us nearly every week.
Oh,
what does she want us to paint?
I would be interested
I would
to
be
know
super interested to hear this.
if there are any particular requests.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. But I think it's kind of incumbent on me. I always think it's like when you hear a radio show and they go, phone in with your stories, and you go, it's your radio show, you come up with something. Well, who put you in charge if you can't even come up with your own radio show? That's it. Asking people to text in, do your job for you. Well, yeah. Anyway.
So come up with an idea.
No, that's just Graham being lazy. You have an idea, Graham.
None of mine are original or interesting.
No, of course not. But have one anyway.
Yeah. Otherwise, what are you going to shoot down in a couple of weeks' time?
Nothing is original, and everything is interesting. It's all a matter of attitude. Well, I enjoyed doing that, and I enjoyed the colours. Those edges are too much. I'm going to break those edges.
See, what people that watch don't realise is that this can continue for up to 20 minutes, half an hour when the cameras get turned off.
I don't tend to fit it. It could, but it doesn't. It doesn't.
And he'll put it up in the shop tomorrow and just go, oh, I could just fix that little bit. And it has been known he'll come down with a brush.
I did do it with the twining.
Yeah.
But once you spot it, and the palette's still here, because I've got all my lovely colours here, still ready to go. So you can just pick the bit up you need and go downstairs and put it on. Yeah. Go, that's better. So yes. Again, thanks for coming.
Thanks for joining.
And we'll look forward to seeing you all next time.
Yeah. So portrait next week.
Yes.
This is the start of Talking Heads.
Well, I hope. Well, I mean, it turns out I'm terrible at getting anybody to come or asking anybody. Well, you do ask people, and they go, "No, that sounds awful." And
do you find as well that you get the "Oh, you should ask," and then put somebody else in, basically saying, "No, don't ask me."
Yeah, I mean, not that I've tried, not that it's actually a sort of a problem, but I think you could get vain people quite easily. But I've never been, I'm not interested in flattering anyone, so. You only get to paint those people once, because once they see what you actually do, they go, "Oh no, this is awful. This is not in keeping with my public image." And I don't mean vain, but sort of self-aware people. The only way to get people queuing up is for it to be a great honour, and I guess it isn't yet. But
yet, that's the key word. Anyway,
thanks for coming.
Thank you for joining.
See you next time.
Sorry for seeing you.